So enough of the characteristics, let's talk a little bit about how to win at this level. And again, this is just an overview level, and during the months to come we'll fill in detail a lot of these kind of areas anyway, because that's the whole point really of the course, is to help you kind of teach you to win. I assume you're not doing this course just to just for the theory side of it or the fun side of it. I mean, I assume you're doing this because you want to play better table tennis and beat more people and obviously get better. But what do we need? What are the things we're going to need to work on and need to do to win at intermediate level? And okay, first thing was that I mentioned as before is the big rule of three, is we've got to have 3 attacks, be able to do 3 attacks in a row or 3 defences in a row. Now I'm going to start talking here about the 3 attacks. Now, when I'm talking about 3 attacks, I don't mean that you have to, on any ball that comes to you, start attacking. Okay, you can still pick and choose whatever balls you like to attack. And more defensive players, close to the table or choppers, may attack a lot less. You may not want to attack every ball, every rally. You may only attack when you really feel it's easy, or you may simply prefer to counter-attack a lot, and that's fine. That's a personal consideration. But when you do attack, this is what you need at intermediate level now. Firstly, when you attack, the first attack, your opening shot, you should be able to attack off backspin, you should be able to attack off topspin. So you should be able to start on both. Okay? That's very important. And the reason that's very important is that provided you can, most people find attacking off topspin not so bad. It's that attacking off backspin that's a little bit harder. The reason why having the attacking off backspin is important is that if you can do that, you can now start to serve backspin and side spin balls and double bounce them on the table. And I'll get into this more into the serving side, but the idea being is that if you can make the ball bounce twice on that opponent's side, backspin and side spin is much easier to do that than pure side spin or top spin and side spin. It's actually, I still find it very difficult to bounce twice on the table using a top spin serve. Very tough to do. I still find that tough. But using backspin and side spin, and if you can double bounce it on your opponent's side, he's going to have to play the ball, hopefully from this area, this last 6 inches of the table more or less, not very far off it. That makes it in turn very, very difficult for him to either keep the ball short on your end of the table, or if he does flick it, he's not going to attack it because it's not coming off the end, he hasn't got room to swing. So he's going to have to push it or flick it. And what's going to happen then is if he pushes, he's going to give you backspin. If he flicks, he's going to give you topspin. But the chances are good that the ball's going to come off the end of the table. He's going to find it very hard to put it back so that it bounces twice. And so you can now start your attack. So what this ability to serve backspin and side spin does is it forces him to usually push from a long way away, from the net. Makes it easier for you. You then get this push return most of the time. And you need to be able to hit the first one against backspin because that's going to what you're going to get. So it all chains together. Serve backspin, side spin, get a push return, it comes off the end of the table, you open against that backspin, side spin, and depending on your opponent, a lot of the time you'll get a block. And that comes back to you as sort of light topspin, and you now go from lifting the ball, you now go back to your normal topspin. And that's a good easy pattern to do. Whereas if you don't have the ability to lift the ball against backspin, you're stuck with side spin serves and top spin serves. They're harder to keep short on the table, they're more likely to go off the end, and they're easier then, your opponent can attack it, and then you'll end up quite often, if you're playing a decent opponent, you're going to end up blocking a lot, and you're on the defensive rather than the offensive. And the idea being is even for relatively defensive players is if you can get in and you can attack, you might as well. Your chances are usually going to be better to win the point than if you're giving your opponent a free attack that he hasn't earned, or that you're not prepared for. So it's important to be able to open up off backspin. The next skill that links with that people find difficult, is that if you start with opening off that backspin ball and your opponent blocks it, you've got to be able to go from lifting, he blocks it, to your normal topspin, and move from that swing angle to that swing angle. And I've seen players who have been playing 15, 20 years and who still haven't mastered that skill. And so they stay in our B grade as an intermediate level player. And it's just because they can't do that and that. They can only do that off the topspin. You know, they can't automatically adjust from one to the other, and they haven't bothered working on it. And so they stay. They have a decent topspin off topspin off the block, but they can't win in A grade in our top level, because in A grade they serve their serve, we push it back, and they can open and maybe sometimes hit the first one and lift it, we block it and they can't adjust and they miss their second ball. And so they just can't compete at the A grade level, that slightly more advanced level. So you need it. You've got to be able to either serve topspin and then attack topspin, 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 or serve backspin, get the push back, open it, get the block, topspin, topspin. And that's that intermediate level, that's what you should be working on, because that's going to be one of the things that will take you from intermediate and move you up into advanced level. Because it will allow you to attack whenever the ball's off the end of the table, and if you're feeling balanced and ready, and you know what spins on the ball, you know you can attack it and you can start your attack. And if you can then go from there to there, you can start your sequence of 3 attacks in a row, whether the opponent pushes or whether the opponent flicks. That will make you a solid attacker, even if you prefer to play a kind of defensive game. You know, and don't want to attack all the time. When you do attack, you're going to be pretty sure of winning the point. So that's very important. Another thing you must do at this level is you really must close up the worst gap in your game, or the worst 1 or 2 gaps in your game, and close them or cover them up. Now by that I don't mean, say you're a close to the table player who can't chop from 10 feet back. Well, that's not really a gap in your game, because you don't do that. But what you're looking for is, if you're a close to the table player who can't push on his forehand and can't do a forehand push, you better fix that. Because as soon as your opponents realise that, you're going to expect to get a lot of backspin balls pushed to your forehand and a lot of backspin serves going to your forehand. And people at that level, intermediate level, you know, they're not always quick to catch on, but they will eventually, and once they do, they will hammer it. And over again, you'll be pushing forehands for the rest of your life. And unless you actually work to improve it, you're never going to move out of intermediate level, because everybody will just play that weakness over and over again. And that's it. You know, you'll just be stuck. So you've either got to be able to cover it, or you've got to fix it. So that's what I mean in terms of your gaps. You've got to basically say to yourself, okay, look, the way I play, this area is a real weakness. I have to be able to fix that and do it. What would be another type of weakness? Well, say if you're not very good at returning balls with side spin. You know, so your return of serve off any side. If your opponent suddenly puts side spin on the ball and you have the ball going all ways, you know, you've got to work on that. I mean, that doesn't matter what player you are. Anybody who has a poor return of serve, who can't read side spin, you've got to do some remedial work, because I don't care what style you play, you can't spend every point hoping to hit it with your long pips to ignore the side spin, because sooner or later you can't do it. And it will, trying to cover the whole table with your long pips on return of serve quite often opens up other gaps. So no, you're better off saying, well, I'll spend 15 minutes every week asking my friends to serve side spin, and I'll get him to serve that side spin serve that I miss until I learn how to handle it, and then I'll move on to another one. You just got to improve it. You can't ignore that sort of hole. You can't ignore. Okay? There are other ones that you maybe can ignore. one sort of thing that I know as personally, as a hole that I've got, is I've never had a very powerful smash. And that's a hole in my game. I struggle to really smash the ball with power. I cover that though because what I do instead is instead of smashing a lot, I will smash, but I'll smash right at them with less power, which makes it harder. Or I will loop the ball high with side spin and top spin and try and make them miss off the side of the table and still make it difficult for them. Now, would I be better off learning how to smash with a little bit of power? I probably would to do it. The only problem I've got is after 20 years, when the ball goes up that high, I've kind of grooved the way I play it. And I'd probably struggle to introduce that now. I probably could, but 5 weeks to go from the Nationals is probably not the time to do it. And the second thing is, as a defender, the amount of times I'm actually smashing the ball isn't that often. So it's not a crucial hole that I have to cover. I don't lose a lot of points on it, is what I'm saying, even though it is a gap. You know, so it's just something that I should do a little better. Okay. Also, to win at this level, we've got to keep improving. You've got to keep working on your strengths. And you've got to have a good knowledge of what those strengths are. And at this level, whatever that strength is, you need to give a little bit of thought onto how can you play it more often. And what I mean by that is I'll give you two different examples and just to highlight it. Okay, the first obvious example is you might have a good strong forehand loop. Okay? How do you play more forehand loops? Well, you use this sort of side spin so the ball pops over to your forehand side more often. That's one way that you could do it. Or you use your pendulum serve so the ball goes to your backhand corner and you know it goes to your backhand corner and you step around and get your forehand. Okay? That's another way to do it. Or you play to the opponent's forehand corner a lot so that he tends to hit cross court into your forehand. And that's another thing that you can do. You also serve a lot of shortish balls to make your opponent push or flick it, and hopefully on the forehand side you can get going. Whereas if you serve a lot of long serves, it's quite possible your opponent will attack it and loop, and you'll have to block. So you will avoid that. So what you're looking to do is try and build sequences in your game that encourage your opponent to go to that forehand side with his push, with his flick, or with a basic block, rather than giving him the chance to attack to your forehand where you have to block it. So that's one thing. So yeah, keep. Another one would be, say, you may have a strength in that your commonly at this level, your backhand push is very strong and very consistent. You always get it on the table. You can vary the spin. Well, again, in that case, it's better off for you to serve a lot of backspin stuff. Sure, get the opponent to push it, but I would now be serving to his backhand corner. You know, and I would still serve pendulums, but I'd serve that pendulum serve, but I wouldn't run around into the forehand. I'd stay in position and start pushing with my backhand and start varying the spin. You know, and that would allow me to play more of the style that I want, more of my backhand push, you know, that kind of thing. So you're trying to chain it together. Oh yes, just one thing. One thing I didn't mention with that rule of three, I talked about the offence but not the defence. When you're defending on this rule of three, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the ball back 3 times and solidly. Now, defending usually means in this case, not so much as a long-range defender, I mean chopping the ball. But it is true, I mean, but that should be your sort of game. That should be something easy. Where I'm usually talking about, but it'll still work. If you can do, someone's looping and you can do 3 good long-range chops, you'll usually win the point. You'll have missed before then. But where it's critical is in that close to the table area where you're blocking the ball and someone's attacking at you. Now, when you're blocking that ball, you don't need to overdo it. And I see a lot of cases where the opponent loops, and my student would go, block. It's hard as he could. He'd try to block it or counter hit it or counter loop it, but basically put a lot of power into the shot. And that's a no-no, it's not needed. And what I would tell my students is, look, block it with the old 6-inch of that much block, like that, just a little bit of block. Put it back and place the ball where the opponent has to move. But forget about taking a big swing and trying to hit a winner with your block. Just dead bat it and hold your bat there. Let it bounce off and get it on. And if you can do that 3 times, by that stage your opponent will have missed. Okay? The level at this intermediate level, people just overdo the counter, the block, and the counter attack here. All you really need to do if someone loops at you is get the ball back, get the ball back, get the ball back. Bang, bang, bang. And by the 4th time he'll have missed, 80–90% of the time. So ease off on your blocking. Don't try and counter hit through him. It looks great, it's flashy. Someone loops and you block a winner, bang. But you don't need it, it's low percentage. Let them loop, block it wide. He loops another one, block it into his elbow, or block it to his backhand. He loops another one, block it the other way, or block it back. By that stage he's going to have missed. You don't have to take a big risk on that kind of thing. Just don't overdo it. Get 3 decent blocks back, and at this level, most of the time you'll have won the point. He won't do 4. I can virtually guarantee it. That he won't do 4. If he can do 4, you're probably not playing intermediate level player. You're probably playing advanced level player, and you're gonna lose anyway. Probably in that case, it's gonna So just get the ball back. Trust me on that one. All right. Scouting. What you should be doing is you should be scouting your opponents in advance, and you should be during the match reading your opponents. Now I've already talked about that in previous videos, so don't forget to go back and have another look. That stuff's important. It works. It gives you a clue as to what your opponent's going to do in certain situations. It lets you pick your responses better. It helps you set your tactics better. So don't ignore that if you really want to win. Okay? Develop a few simple patterns with your long pips. Now, what I mean by that is usually by intermediate level stages, you should find there are a few routines, there are a few things that you do that the same thing sort of happens. The typical example I usually give is with the long pips is if you can play it so that if you're pushing with the inverted and your opponent's pushing as well. So you're going backspin, 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 backspin. If you can slip in a push with the long pips, so it's backspin, backspin, long pips, you're now going to give him a ball that looks like a backspin stroke, but it's going to go back to him with light topspin or float. And what he's going to do a lot of the time is he's going to treat it like another backspin, so the ball's going to pop up. And now you're going to have a chance, because you're both pushing, the ball's not going to come at you very fast. You've now got a chance to run around and hit your best forehand, or hit your best backhand, whatever's convenient. And that's just a simple, typical pattern. Recognising that when you're in a backspin rally and you get the chance to chop them with the long pips, a lot of the time your opponent will pop the ball. Simple pattern, very, very easy. Another kind of simple pattern is if you're in a long pip rally, and your opponent's feeding you float balls and you're long pipping it, try and get a chop in with the inverted side, and you'll probably get him to go down into the net. Simple pattern. Or if you're in a topspin rally, you're counter hitting, or he's looping and you're counter hitting, if you can block one and get a blocking twiddle and get a block in with your pips, he's going to probably put that in the net as the long pips, or the anti-spin turns it into backspin. Very simple patterns, but those are the kind of things you'll start to recognise. You'll see where you chain things together well and what works for you. And you should have a couple that just feel very comfortable and very easy. And the reason for that is we're going to, although you always want to be aware of your long pips and what you're doing, is you don't want to be focusing exclusively during the match and concentrating solely on, okay, I'm going to do this with the long pips and that with the long pips and then chop that with the swim. Because you're not focusing on the rest of the game, you're overthinking. It's much easier just to be, you know, da, 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 twiddle, bang, bang. And just knowing that, you know, oh yeah, inverted, 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 twiddle, pops up, bang. And that's your pattern. And it's simple, without too much thinking. So there should be a couple of automatic, easy things that you do without having to think too much with your long pips. And we still don't want to complicate things too much with our long pips at this stage. Okay. Another thing at this level in order to win is you've got to recognise that at this level, even though you've developed some weapons and some things that win the point for you consistently, whether it's an attack or a heavy chop or maybe a roll with your long pips or your anti or anything like that, although you've now got some weapons, that doesn't mean that consistency is no longer important. Consistency is still important, okay? You're still going to need to be giving your opponent plenty of chances to make mistakes. So you've still got to keep your unforced errors low, okay? So don't take unnecessary risks. Now, having said that, what you'll find is at intermediate level, this is where at low intermediates, the people who play safe and don't take any risks can still win at the low level. Once they start to get to that middle level, what you'll find is by about that stage of middle intermediate, the people who play safe but never take an aggressive risk in some fashion, such as varying the spin when chopping or attacking or whatever, the people who aren't willing to take a calculated risk, they'll get to at best mid-intermediate and they'll start getting beaten, they won't get any better. And the reason for this is that at about this level is where the people who are being aggressive, whether they're looping and attacking aggressive, or whether they're pushing and varying the spin with the push and winning with backspin type aggressive. But at this level, this is the level where their consistency of these people is starting to get good enough that their calculated risks are going to overwhelm someone who just puts the ball back and never takes a risk. And so they'll get to that level, and after that point, these guys are just going to get better because they're taking aggressive risks, they're going to get better with their technique, they're going to get more on, they're going to get better with their push, and then maybe develop, once the ball comes up, a put away. And what will happen is the guy who just plays it safe will basically stay at about mid-intermediate and never go any further unless he starts to develop an attack or some sort of aggressive calculated risk strategy of his own, and then he'll start to progress again. And it can be done, yeah, you can do that, but it's better to sort of always be taking calculated risks all the way through, because then you don't have to change your mindset too much. But this is really mid-intermediate level, the guys who play safe, that's where they stay until they start to use some calculated risks. Okay. And I guess that's the, for you guys at intermediate, calculated risks now is really a lot of it is about. What they're doing is saying, well, look, if the ball is this far below the table and heavily spun, I'm not going to attack that because the risk to reward ratio, no good. There's very little chance I'll make it, and even if I did, I probably wouldn't win the point. Whereas if the ball's this high above the table and maybe got a heavy backspin, you're starting to get to that area of, well, if I'm nicely balanced and I know it's heavy, I might go for it because I think I can make that, you know. And then if it's this high above the table and a light backspin or a block and you know what spins on it, you'll say, well, that's my standard bread and butter shot. I can make that 80% of the time, 90% of the time. Go ahead and hit it, and you hit it without a problem, you know. And same thing with pushing. It's really no different, you know. There'll be some that you'll have your standard push for those close to the table players with the inverted or the long pips, or short pips or whatever. There'll be some times that, you know, you'll change the stroke, and as you get better, you'll be more confident about changing that whenever you want, or adding side spin, or you'll be able to hit with the long pips or the anti-spin off lower balls because your technique will be better. You'll be able to hit a little bit harder because your technique will be better. and you'll be taking a calculated risk. You know, saying, well, you know, I can now go harder and still make it 90% of the time. Whereas if you soften it off, you could probably make it 100% of the time, but it'll be too easy for the opponent. So what you're doing is you're making it harder for the opponent at the slight risk that you might make a mistake. And that's where calculated risk starts going. And as we get to aggressive, to high advanced level play, it really is to a certain extent almost all about this calculated risks, where they're so aggressive because what they're saying is, well, look, I can be aggressive, maybe make 80% of my shots, but that 80% is going to win me most of them, therefore overall that's a better plan for me than playing safe, putting the ball on the table and having my opponent attack me with his calculated risks, and then I'm on a losing strategy. So knowing your risk-reward ratio and taking calculated risks is important. Tactical play, yep. As we mentioned before, tactical play is going to become important. We'll talk again more in other videos about specific tactics, but what I'll leave you with in this particular part about tactical play is your tactical play starts to come less focused on yourself. You know, as at beginner stages, people focus on themselves a lot, and we're going to start focusing much more on our opponent and what he's doing and how we then respond to that. So our tactics and our mindset is starting to we need to take much more notice of your opponent. So you should be able to say, well, look, he's doing this, he's doing that, and even if you don't have a solution, you should at least be able to say, this is what's happening to me. And then maybe in that match, if you can't find an answer, you can go off and ask somebody and get some advice. But yeah, tactical play definitely becoming more important. Yep, mentioned about expanding your repertoire of long pips and anti-techniques. So now at this level, this is the time now where you can start experimenting with hitting with them, with doing the shovel push with them, with doing the fake chop with them, which I don't think I've done the video of that yet, but I'll get to it. But basically now's the time to start experimenting with that. In a match, still be conservative, don't overuse them, but now's the time to start introducing them. So still use your basic technique most of the time, but every now and again, throw in a variation. Start getting used to the idea, but just don't go mad with it. Don't. Some people just start to go, well, hey, I can hit with it now, and they hit every single ball with the long pips, forgetting that that's not really what it's designed for. It's designed for other stuff, and so they're no longer using it in the best way. Okay. Yep. Ball placement. Okay. At this level, compared to beginner level, a lot of it's about just get the ball back on the table. So at beginner level, you know, the middle of the table is where you're aiming to give yourself the best chance of making a mistake and still get the ball on. Now at intermediate level, we're starting to look more at middle of the table is last resort. That's when you're desperate. The middle of the table is where you would aim, say if your opponent's completely tricking you with his serves and you're struggling completely to get them back. Middle of the table then is where you go. If you know what's going on, or during a rally you're placing the ball, we now have to start working on place it wide to his forehand to make him move, place it wide to his backhand to make him move, place it at his playing elbow to make him move and choose, and quite often either go short enough so that it bounces twice, or go long and deep so that it pushes him back when he has to attack or play the ball. And depth-wise, try to stay out of the centre. Because if you play in the centre of the table, instead of playing the ball from about this back when he attacks, he can now start to play the ball, you know, from over the table, and that opens up angles. So depth starts to become more important, and just placement in general becomes more important. And again, that's something that we'll probably cover in other videos in more detail, or along the way in certain other videos. But yeah, definitely placement is becoming more important. And finally, in order to win at this level, you know, this just to finish with, this is the one that usually you'll always get this advice, and I think almost all of us ignore it, But honestly, truthfully, if you did this, this will do more for you than any other technique at intermediate level. This will do more for you to take you to advanced level than anything else. And this is get your serves right, learn to serve a couple of good serves, double bounce serves with varying spin. Learn 3 or 4 of them. Practice that and learn to return them. Do it with a friend, get him to do it to you, and practice returning them properly. And if you spend, honestly, if you spend an hour a week on serve and serve return and didn't do anything else, you know, the rest of your game would improve naturally a little bit, but you'd dominate intermediate level play and go into advanced play very fast, simply because your rallies would hardly ever last. People wouldn't be able to get the ball back a lot of the time, you know, when you're serving, and when they did get it back, you'd have an easy attack, and when they serve to you, you'd be able to handle it. They'd struggle to attack, and you're into rallies. And that is honestly, that is truly the best advice I can give you at this level. If you've only got an hour to train or an hour to play a week, and you're looking to improve, spend at least half of that hour training serve and serve return. Honestly, I don't do it. I don't do enough of it. I'm not saying that I'm not kind of like some person who kind of tells you that I do things I don't do. I don't do enough of it, you know, so I should do more of it. I find it very boring is the problem. And usually when I'm training with someone, the problem is that quite often they don't want to train serve and serve return because I'm competing against these guys quite often. So it doesn't get done. But if I had a friend who didn't mind it, that's what I would like to do, because it would actually improve the game a lot. And if you can get a friend who says, okay, you know, we'll both practice serve and serve return, honestly, it will do you more good than anything else. It really will. Having good serves and good serve returns, because then when you get into the rallies, you're always getting into the rallies either with the advantage or at least on an equal footing, and you'll find that you'll shoot yourself up into advanced level. You know, at advanced level, you'll still need other things eventually, because at that level, everybody's got fairly decent serves, fairly decent returns, and we then start getting into rallies and other stuff. But even at advanced level, the person with a great serves and great serve returns make everybody else at that advanced level really struggle. So it's worth having. So I can't say that enough. It's one of those cases where I wish I could follow my own advice more, but I find it hard to get over the boring aspect of it and do it. And you know, hey, I'm not perfect either. But that's sort of enough, I think, for today on intermediate level stuff. And we're going to cover a lot of this more in sort of weeks and months to come, and we'll delve deeper into it. Because I think intermediate level is really where a lot of members are going to be at. And hopefully we'll get you up to advanced level soon. But I think this is kind of like 80%, 70% of the course needs to be at this level to get you through. Beginner you can get through fairly simply if you do a few simple things. Intermediate is where you can really lose your way a little bit to try to get to that advanced level. So we'll cover a lot. So that's some overview stuff. Don't be afraid after looking at this video if you want to whip me off a couple of questions for extra clarification or suggestions for future topics to, could you expand on this, and give me more on that. For the future. I may not get to it this week, I may say, well look, I'll cover that a month down the track, but it's all good with that kind of thing. And what we'll be doing is basically, just let me know where you need extra help or where something's come up, anything that I didn't clearly explain, or just anything else that you think I missed about intermediate level player, any suggestions that you think would be good for other people. I'm certainly not claiming to know everything there is to know about intermediate level play, so if you've got a suggestion, share it with me and I'll pass it on to everybody else. But for the moment, I can feel my voice is starting to go after an hour, so I'm going to wind it up here. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon with the next video, which I think will probably be, I'll cover some serve stuff where I'll get some of my old serving videos. I'll get them up on the site for you to look at, and I will also then give you an overview, just talking about serving, what kind of serves to look at, how to chain it with the rest of your game, and all that sort of stuff. So that will be sort of in the next few days to come. But for the moment, I'm done. So thank you.